Hi there, it's Melody Brooke. I'm back with you today talking about anxiety. And I'm running a few minutes late today because I had a corporate client today, but thanks for hanging in there with me. Today I want to talk about anxiety, and some of the factors that I'm going to be addressing are genetics, trauma, stress, and mindfulness, which is a tool that I've talked about often here, and I'll talk about some more today, and how it applies to anxiety. So make sure that your sound is turned on and your volume is turned up so that you can hear what I'm saying today. And you can also check out more of my Facebook live feed on my just from my profile page. You can scan through there, or on the Melody Brooke LPC LMFT page. They're all on there also. So okay, so today, anxiety. Wow, I think that is sort of where we're at with most of us today. There was a book back in the 70s called Future Shock. I don't know how many of you read that. It's about that thick, but it was really excellent. And it talked a lot about the way our world would be today, and I think it was pretty darn close. It was like a futuristic prediction of how our lives would be in the future. And now we're in the future, so here we are. And it was talking about that many of us, possibly all of us, would be on some kind of psychotropic medication, like antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications, or antipsychotics, or mood stabilizers. And at that time, the idea of that seemed pretty foreign. So, but here we are today, and it's the reality. A lot of us, many of us, are dealing with anxiety on a daily basis, and some of us find some different ways to cope besides medications. But, and that's the reality of our world today. And in the book, he talks about part of the reason for that being that we have changes happening so fast that it's hard for us to keep up. Things are happening so quickly, and I find that so true within the last couple of years in particular, where every day there's something else in the news. Every day there's something else upsetting that's happening. Every day there's something that stimulates a sense of anxiety if you are prone to being that way. So one of the things that I wanted to talk about was the genetic factor of anxiety. A lot of people don't realize that anxiety can be inherited. It's like, I see it as a family trait that some families have more of a tendency to, kind of like some families will have more of a tendency to cancer, some families will have more of a tendency to have alcoholism, and some families have a tendency to have anxiety be just part of your general nature of your genetic profile. So when we're talking about anxiety, one of the things to do is to kind of look back in your life and see who in your past, your mom, your dad, a sibling, a aunt, an uncle, a grandparent, who might have also suffered with anxiety, and consider the possibility that some of your anxiety may be attributable to that. That doesn't change how you have to deal with it, but it changes some of the maybe worries about how it is that you came to be this way. Because a lot of times that's the fact, that we just happen to be people that are more prone to being anxious, and learning how to deal with that and accepting who you are, and just recognizing that, can't help it, just the way it is. And here's what you're going to have to do to help yourself manage it in a way that makes your life more enjoyable, because nobody enjoys feeling stressed out and anxious all the time. So when you look back at your history and see if, in fact, there is someone in your family, maybe there's a pattern. Maybe there's many people in your family that also deal with similar things that can be passed down through one side or another, or sometimes both. And sometimes some OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder also can go along with that anxiety, because a lot of times at its extreme, that's what anxiety can become. So if you are one of those people, please pay attention, because I'm going to be giving you some tips that will help you deal with that. So hang on just a second. Whoop. I forgot to get my phone so that I can keep track of the time over here. All right, where are we at? All right, so what I would like to talk about now if you're just joining us, I've been talking about anxiety. I'm going to be talking about anxiety for the next 20 minutes or so. And I've just talked about the factor of genetics and how that can certainly be a part of a person's makeup for how they deal with what's happening inside their bodies with anxiety. The other things I'm going to be talking about are trauma, stress, and mindfulness. So if you're just now joining us, please make a note. If this is the first time you've watched one of my Facebook Lives, please chime in and say where you're from and what your interest is. And also, if you have any questions or comments, please leave them. I may or may not have time to answer them while we're live, but I will definitely answer them later. So let me know. I'd love to chat with you. So now I'm going to be talking about anxiety, and I'm going to be talking about the factor of how trauma plays a place. I'm also later going to be talking about how stress and mindfulness affect anxiety. So make sure that your your sound is turned on and volume is turned up, and check out my link above if you want more information about me. So trauma is something that I could probably will at some point do a whole segment on, but a lot of times anxiety comes from a history of some kind of trauma. Now, ironically, a lot of people don't realize things that have happened to them as being traumatic. I've spoken with a lot of clients who have childhoods that on the surface seemed okay, and they didn't realize how emotionally abandoned they felt. There's a variety of ways in which you can be emotionally abandoned, as well as the kind of horrific trauma of child abuse, sexual abuse, rape, the more horrific things, war, experiencing military trauma. But also there's just the day-to-day trauma of not having someone available to you, the day-to-day trauma of needing your emotional needs to be met and someone is not available to you. That can happen even in circumstances where everybody is well-intentioned, but no one recognizes the needs that you may be having. And as a result, you feel traumatized because you are not getting those needs met, which, if you think about trauma, what is trauma? Trauma is being in a circumstance where any normal person would see this as out of the ordinary. Now, if you grew up in that circumstance, you don't recognize it as being out of the ordinary. I speak with a lot of clients whose parents were, your typical disciplinarian parents who were very strict and maybe even used spanking as punishment, but the adult, did not think of it as being abusive because it was ordinary, and maybe even happened to most of their friends. A lot of us have that, have spanking as a part of just a normal way of growing up. And while I'm not going to call that abuse, I am going to talk about the fact that there have been plenty of studies that show that a child who's been raised in an environment where spanking was used as a form of discipline often develop anxiety, become more anxious, become less secure in the world, and are constantly fearing or creating their own punishment. Because if you're raised in an environment where you believe that if you do something wrong, then you should be punished, that's appropriate, then what happens is you have anxiety all the time that you're going to do something wrong, and because something bad will happen, like you'll be punished. So that's what I mean by that sort of normal anxiety that comes from if you've been raised in an environment where there's a lot of strict discipline. The other thing that can be traumatic is neglect. So if you've been raised in an environment where emotionally or physically your needs have not been met, if your parents are not available to you, and kids know that they need their parents. So if their parents abandon them, or if their parents are emotionally unavailable to them, then they can grow up feeling a lot of anxiety just out of that hole that's in their life for something that they needed. So that kind of covers a variety of ways in which we can develop anxiety, because if we have trauma, we have an expectation unconsciously that there will be more trauma. Even being in an environment where you're highly criticized in an emotionally or verbally abusive way, even when it doesn't appear on the surface to be that way, we still can experience that in our gut as being a threat, and then grow up with a continual sense of anxiety about the potential for that to happen again. Or we develop our own sort of self-tapes about that. So, wow, I've probably talked way more than my time limit on that topic, but understand that trauma plays a huge role. And if you have anxiety, and consider the possibility that trauma or neglect or a really strict discipline or a lack of emotional availability may have been part of what's driving some of your anxiety. And it's a good thing to get some help for that. And I'm going to offer you some tips today, too, as well. So, So today, my topic is, I'm Melody Brooke. If you're just joining me, I'm talking about anxiety and going over several things that contribute to anxiety or can be helpful for anxiety. So the first thing that I'm talked about today was genetics, the genetic component of anxiety. The second thing I've talked about so far is trauma and how that can affect your anxiety level. And the third thing that I'm going to be talking about is stress and how that can affect current anxiety levels. And then I'll be talking about mindfulness. So make sure that you have your volume turned on, your sound turned on, your volume turned up so that you can hear what I'm saying. Also, you can tune in to any of my other episodes on my Facebook feed just by going to my page, or also to my Melody Brooke LPC LMFT page, where I post them as well. So, and if you have any questions or thoughts, please put them below. I'll be happy to respond the best I can. So thanks for tuning in. And so next, I'm going to be talking about stress. Stress is, as most of you know, what happens in your life when you just feel tense all the time. And a lot of the reasoning for that, and I talked early in this broadcast about the effect that continual change has on our sense of stress. So when we live in a world, as we do, where things are changing so rapidly, I mean, you can wake up in the morning and suddenly your whole life has changed, not because of anything you've done, but perhaps because of something someone else does. A lot of us felt that on the morning of 9/11. Others of us felt that the morning of November 9th, after the election. A lot of us feel that way on a daily basis when we read what's happening in the world today in the news. And that's just the external sort of worldwide stuff that can increase our sense of stress and threat. It feels like a threat to our existence. What stress basically is, okay, this is a model of your brain. Some of you have seen this before. Basically, this part of my hand is representative of the old brain, or the reptilian brain, where you experience that fight, flight, freeze automatic reflex that happens when you feel like you're under threat. And our brain doesn't know the difference between actual threat to our personal survival at this moment and a perceived threat, which is why people so often will get so reactive on Facebook when they're talking about topics that are close to their heart or that feel threatening to them, even if it's not an immediate threat. And it gets that old brain reactive, and then our midbrain is then flooded. That's called the mammalian brain, why we love our dogs and cats so much, because it's the emotional centers of the brain. We get flooded with the emotions that associated with stress, and our new brain shuts down. And what happens is that we're not even functioning that well mentally when we're stressed, because our new brain is where our logical thought is, our language skills are, our judgment, our sense of who we are in relationship to each other, and all of that gets thrown out the window when we're stressed. And every day today, it seems like there's something that is the potential for creating stress in our lives. So that can, just having that underlying sense of stress, even if it's not affecting your personal daily life, and the fact that it's happening out there in the world can create a sense of stress. And if there are things happening in your daily life, divorces, losses, work problems, work conflicts, conflicts with your spouse, those kinds of things can increase your sense of stress, even when you're obviously not in any real danger, but it feels like it on an emotional level, which causes a sense of anxiety and like there's something that you should be doing. And then you get triggered into feeling those overwhelming, stressful anxiety feelings. And that is why I'm now going to talk about mindfulness a little bit. So today I've been talking about anxiety. I've been talking about some of the causes of that, and I've been talking about how our brains work and in creating that sense of anxiety in our body and our whole ecosystem. So what I'm talked about so far today is I've talked about anxiety. Make sure that you have your sound turned on, your volume turned up if you're just now tuning in. And if you are, please make a note and let me know that you're watching and tell me where you're from if this is the first time that you've been on. And now I'm going to, I've talked about genetics and trauma and stress as factors in anxiety. So now I want to talk a little bit about mindfulness. So some of you may have heard about what mindfulness is, but don't fully understand how to go about it. Now, one of the things that I'm well aware of is that mindfulness requires the ability to do some meditation. And for an anxious person, meditation in general is just like, oh my gosh, I cannot settle my brain enough to do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take a couple of moments and I'm going to talk about what some things are, some tricks are that you can use if you are an anxious person to get yourself into a mindful state and settle down that old brain so that you can function at a higher level. One of the things I also know is sometimes we have to do this a whole bunch of times because there's so many things in our world to trigger us into those anxious feelings. Whether we start off having those feelings. Hi, Matthew. And hi there, Dustin from Arkansas. Thanks for tuning in. And so what I want you to do is I want you to pay attention to these little tricks that I'm going to give you that will help you deal with stress and anxiety and help calm that old brain down so that you can function better. And all of us want to function better. The truth is, when we do not have access to our higher brain functioning, we're not able to function as well at work. We're not able to function as well within our partnerships. We're not able to solve our daily problems as well, and we make judgments maybe that are not the best. So what I want you to do is, first off, recognize that mindfulness is a state of mind that we can get into on a daily basis. And if you will do it 27 minutes a day, which sounds like a lot, but it doesn't have to be consecutive. If you can do it 27 minutes a day, it can actually change your brain chemistry so that you can experience less anxiety. I've had people actually get off of their anti-anxiety medication by using mindfulness techniques. So I'm just teaching you some things that people pay me good money for. So what I'm going to start off with is actually if you're in a place where you can close your eyes, take a deep breath, do that now. So sit back and just listen to the sound of my voice. Put both feet on the floor. Take a deep breath. I'm going to slow down now. I've been going very quickly. Take a deep breath. And listen to the sounds around you. Just let your mind focus on the sounds. Nothing you need to do about any of it. Just be aware of the sounds. Take another deep breath. And just be aware of the sensation of the weight of your body on whatever you're sitting on and your feet on the floor. Then take a second and go back to noticing sounds. Breathe and just notice the sensation of air on your face, your hands. Breathe and come back to noticing sounds. just be aware of the sensation of your clothes on your skin. And then come back to noticing the sounds. Breathe. And just be aware of anything happening inside your skin. Notice breath coming in through your nose and out through your nose again. Notice any tension that you might have in your body, any places that are relaxed. Just notice. And then come back to noticing the sounds. And I want you to notice that just took a couple of minutes for you to refocus your awareness on your sensations. And when you can do that on a regular basis throughout your day, add 2 minutes here to 3 minutes there, a couple of minutes here and there to do that throughout the day, it will change how you experience your life. It will change how you experience your relationships. It will change how you experience your work, and it will allow you to function at a much higher level. So another really quick trick that I just learned a couple of weeks ago is something called square breathing. And I'm going to let you follow my finger with your breath. So what I want you to do is breathe in to the count of 4. Hold to the count of 4. Breathe out to the count of 4. Hold to the count of 4. Breathe in to the count of 4. Hold for the count of 4. Breathe out for the count of 4. Hold for the count of 4. That's something that you can do any place, anytime. So unlike the mindfulness, which sort of requires you to go inside, close your eyes, doing the square breathing, you can follow any rectangular shape that's in your point of view. So if you're maybe in a courtroom, or if you're in your office or at home where there's people around and you just need to take a moment to take a time out, doing the square breathing, you can just follow a window pane, follow a doorway, follow a mirror or a picture, anything that's available to you, and take that moment to settle your old brain. It doesn't take that long. And, oddly enough, the old saying about counting to 10 is actually something that works to help settle your old brain. So that's another quick method of settling yourself. When you notice yourself feeling stressed, when you notice your tension building up in your body, when you notice yourself overreacting to a situation, when you notice yourself shutting down in some way, or even if you just notice that your breath is not perhaps as deep as it could be, those are all signs that your body has been triggered into an anxiety response, and these are some methods for you to settle yourself down. And if you get in the practice of doing this on a regular basis, it can transform your life. It can do a lot to stop the stress levels in your life in general and improve your relationships. So today I have been talking about anxiety. Thank you so much for tuning in, even though I started a few minutes late today. I've been talking about anxiety, and I covered the topics of genetics, the component of how genetics can affect your anxiety, and how trauma can affect your anxiety, how stress can affect your anxiety, and then gave you some tools of mindfulness to help you deal with that anxiety without the use of medications. So I'm a believer in doing that as much as possible, and becoming mindful is a very helpful thing in so many aspects of your life. So I hope you will take advantage of what I just gave you. If you have any thoughts or any questions, comments, please post them below, and I will get back to you with the answers, and if I can, or at least join in the discussion about that. And I will be here next Monday at 4 o'clock. I'm not sure what topic I'll have, but I will post that probably on Thursday, maybe Friday. I'm going to be out skiing, but I will post anyway. So thanks for tuning in, and check out my link above for new events I have coming up. I actually have a speaking event coming up September 24th where you have an opportunity to join me for a workshop. I have another workshop that's coming up, one in March and one in April, where I'm doing interplay, and you can look on my website and see more information about that, the links above. And you can also tune in to the 4 at 4 on Thursdays, where I will be talking with 4 other awesome women at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time, and we have all kinds of interesting topics that we talk about. So check out the 4 at 4, check out my link above, and I will talk to you next week. See you then.